And now we move on to our second leading story. In Ivory Coast, the conviction of relatives of former President Laurent Gbagbo is reviving criticism against the present administration of Alassane Ouattara. Many say the convictions are selective justice and a crackdown on rebels of only Laurent Gbagbo, the former president, while failing to prosecute those of the current president. Both camps had clashed during the post-election conflict that bloodied the country 7 years ago.
A total of 82 witnesses have testified since January 2016. It's now up to the defense of the accused and their witnesses to testify. No date has been set by the International Criminal Court for the beginning of the hearings of those who have decided to testify in favor of former Ivorian Chief of State and his right hand. We will, without further delay, get on phone with Andre Silva Conan, political analyst based in Abidjan. Hello, Conan. Hello and welcome to the Morning Call. Relatives and former collaborators of Laurent Gbagbo have been tried and given severe sentences in Ivory Coast for acts related to tragic post-electoral crisis that tore the country from 2010 to 2011. However, the supporters of Alassane, who were at the time of the rebels' events, not necessarily concerned. Does this remind you of Victor's justice that continues to rage the country? Yes, absolutely. It's justice of the victors. But it should be noted that the justice of the victors remains the justice of the victors. There's never been justice of the vanquished, but it's not necessarily the most appalling thing for the victims. You see, there were 3,000 deaths during this post-electoral crisis, and so far no one has been tried for crimes committed against Ivorian populations. You refer to the pro-Gbagbo we are pursuing. Yes, there are personalities who are being pursued in the context of post-electoral crisis, but they are not personalities who are being prosecuted for crimes of the post-electoral crisis, because there's a real nuance, a confusion that everyone else is making. Nobody so far, nobody, I tell you, nobody has been tried, let alone sentenced in Ivory Coast for crimes of the 3,000 victims of the post-electoral crisis. It's outrageous for the victims, and especially since it's all more outrageous, we are trying to present these current trials because they are political trials, because people are being prosecuted for violating state security. It's really frustrating for the victims to want to present their current trials as the trial of 300 deaths. No, there's no justice for victims in Ivory Coast. People have to know that there's no justice for victims. Don't these multiple condemnations of Laurent Gbagbo's relatives scratch the Ivorian reconciliation discourse conveyed by President Ouattara? Absolutely, reconciliation will not come with trials. I have nothing against lawsuits in particular, but I have something against fabricated lawsuits. Trials that fail to prove the responsibility and guilt of the perpetrators. In a very particular way, you have former Minister of Civil Service, Mr. Herbert Olai, for whom the justice system has not been able to establish any evidence and charges against him, namely a rebellion that was in preparation in the west of the country. On the other hand, there are personalities such as Mr. Ida Kwasi or the officer Major Jean-Noël Labeille, for whom there were nevertheless elements that proved that they had actually tried to do something. But I will say, as long as there's no justice, as long as justice will give the impression that there are prefabricated verdicts imposed, imposed on a category of people, It will be difficult for reconciliation to be fed by justice and truth. What's your reading of this climate of mistrust between the opposition and the government? No, we have the impression that we have an opposition that is absolutely present from political debate, because it's divided between itself and then focus on issues that not necessarily of those Ivorians. And then we have power that's deaf to anything being covered, democratic openness, social openness. In this case, everyone does what they want to do, for it's the great misfortune of Ivorians. André Silva will have to close this chapter of the Ivory Coast. We will obviously continue to follow the outcome of this judicial and political case in the coming days and weeks. As I said earlier, Laurent Gbagbo's defense must now present its witnesses to a court. Thank you, André Silva Conan, for your analysis and your reaction on our station.
And thank you very much indeed. You are watching The Morning Call right here on African News. If you have missed anything on the program, do not worry. You can catch the very latest on our website, www.africanews.com. That is where to go. Again, www.africanews.com. There you can catch the very latest. And we have all the stories that we are bringing to you and the videos of all our other programs as well on the website. Tweet at us at African News and at African News FR in French. There you can share with us what's going on in your country. And still to come on the program. The South African currency, the rand, in new boost as it stabilizes against the US dollar. We find out what is bringing about the sudden boost for the South African currency. Plus, we got sports and much more when we return after the break. Don't go anywhere.